Wildfires aren't getting worse by accident. They're getting worse because the system fighting them was never built to handle anything close to what we're seeing today. So, here are 5 reasons that we haven't solved the wildfire crisis and what we can do about it. My name's Nicole, and I'm a wildfire mitigation consultant. And what I've seen since getting into this work in 2019 is one, we created a problem where there originally wasn't one. We've turned it into a recurring national disaster. And 3, we continue to use the wrong tools and tactics without ever bothering to really understand the root cause. And after the last few years and additional research and interviews and self study, I'm here to help us connect the dots, cut through the noise, and get on a path to living safely with fire. But first, let's review a couple definitions and make sure we're all on the same page. For starters, we keep using wildfire as a catch all. You remember Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride? You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. It's kind of true because we're actually talking about 2 very different kinds of fire events: wildland fire and urban conflagration. Both can be wildfires, but we must make the distinction when we're talking about wildlands or urban fires, or if it's a combination wildland urban fire, shortened to either WOO fire or WOOI for wildland urban interface, because it has an effect on policy and how we handle the situation, which leads me to our firefighting forces. We have 2 different kinds of firefighters. We have our wildland firefighters and their cohort of tankers and pilots and tech bros whose sole purpose is to detect, respond, and suppress fire at all costs, both literal and figurative, primarily for the purpose of preserving timber harvest or logging interests and for appeasing more of our preservationist type forest protectors. But we'll talk about all of that in a later video. But this sets the stage for more devastating wildland fire events, both in terms, and urban fire events too, both in terms of frequency and severity. And that cycle just continues forever. And then we have our metropolitan firefighters, whose sole responsibility is public safety and preventing structure to structure ignition that could lead to an urban conflagration with or without a nearby wildland fire. And these are the folks who are desperately trying to protect your house and can't. Literally can't. It's impossible. And there is no amount of funding, no amount of resources, or more engines, or more water, or more this or that, more anything that is going to help them save you. It is legitimately impossible with the way we've built our homes and communities up until this point. Now, the biggest problem, as you might already have surmised, is these are 2 very different fire challenges and fire professionals, but they've been lumped together into one big ball of whose job is it anyway? Because the people who were originally making all of these decisions generally know more about budgets and bureaucracy than they do about ecology or urban conflagration or public outreach. And as a society, we just always assumed that fire is fire no matter where it happens. And that's just not the case. It's like saying that a lake is the same as the ocean. Like, they're both wet. It's not the same. And urban fire is not the same as wildland fire. And we also just don't know what we're not taught. But at some point, when the information is out there and the stakes are this high, ignorance comes with a price that we cannot afford to pay. So let me break this down simply, because if you understand this part, everything else will start to make so much more sense. Historically, wildland fire was a welcome, natural, and necessary process, and it occurred at regular intervals, cleverly called wildfire return intervals. And not all fire left blackened stumps and moonscapes in its wake. Different fire-adapted ecosystems have different fire regimes, ranging from low-intensity surface fires that, it's kind of like spring cleaning, to kind of mid-severity mixed intensity fires where some trees and shrubs would die, and it helped open up the understory for grasses and wildflowers and created great habitat for wildlife and people. Then you have your stand replacing fires, and these are not inherently bad. However, these stand replacing fires have been turned up to 11 in some instances and are becoming more frequent in ecosystems that did not evolve to handle this much fire. Some ecosystems like lodgepole pine and California chaparral will experience replacement fires as part of their life cycle, and it needs to happen to let new life generate. But in other ecosystems like ponderosa pine that have experienced fire exclusion and have become overgrown and sickly, the forests become tinder boxes and they burn at higher temps for longer periods than they ever experienced in history. And that's how we get our moonscapes and ecosystems that, under normal circumstances, would have been resilient in the face of low to medium intensity fires. But enough of that. Let's make like a hot shot and jump on in. So, reason number one that we haven't fixed the wildfire problem yet: we misunderstood the assignment. And I mean wildland fire and its role in the strange new world that settlers and colonizers found themselves in. This particular topic is extremely complex, and it'll take more than one or two videos to cover all of this, but for now, I'll try and keep it simple and concise. Most settlers and colonists came from countries where wildland fire didn't happen. It just wasn't a thing. And the only cultural burning that happened was when people needed to clear land for agriculture, grazing, or more houses. And then you had early industrialists who viewed these forests as get rich quick schemes. You know, they could clear cut and replant with their preferred lumber species in easily harvestable rows for future reaping. There was a Canadian lumberjack by the name of James Little, and he said, the rate at which forests were being logged was not only burning the candle at both ends, but cutting it in two and setting the match to the four ends to enable them to double the process of exhaustion. So, if at any point you think I'm being spicy about our historic logging practices, James said it first. And even worse were the anti-burning and fire exclusion laws that were written to protect logging interests and further weaken the sense of culture and place for Native Americans as they were pushed farther away from their homes and land. This topic will also have its own video, so come back and check out that when it gets released. So our early relationship with wildland fire was an extremely complex, multifaceted issue that truly goes back 400 years. And for those who want to say, let's go back to 1492, that, again, is going to be another story. So wildland fire is an essential process that keeps our forests and prairies healthy and also protects our watersheds, our rivers and lakes and favorite hunting and fishing spots and our viral Instagram photo op places and so much more. So until we understand the three different ways that fire can interact with a landscape that are normal and natural and critical for ecosystem function and services, we will continue to fall victim to our fears and poor decisions that only compound our billion-dollar disasters. Reason number two: the wildfire industrial complex. Now, if I were to come out and just say, wildland firefighting is bad, I would get canceled so fast, and reasonably so. But it's really just understanding that wildland firefighters' job is to extinguish fire, is to prevent natural processes that actually help us. But it's not their fault. This was a system that we were all born into and very few people questioned. And the few who did got excommunicated from the fire world, which is pretty devastating to go against the status quo sometimes. And back in the early half of last century, you were a goddamn American hero for being in wildland fire. You were the ultimate patriot and the pinnacle of what it meant to be an American. But again, the issue was their job was to put out wildland fires so loggers could keep their lumber products and preservationists could preserve their tree egos. Even more recently, though, around the early 2000s, we've seen the introduction of firefighting planes and flashy red retardant. And even more recently, tech on tech on tech, baby! These early detection systems, AI modeling, and satellite imaging have us drowning in data. And no one that I've talked to yet has a real plan to do anything truly impactful with it. We're spending billions of dollars to just keep banging our heads against a wall. And I'm not against tech. It's cool, it's flashy, and it serves a purpose. But we don't need more data points. We need action. We need to identify areas of high fuel loads and use that to create an action plan. And the red retardant that looks so cool in pictures is salt. It doesn't extinguish the flames. It just causes the fire to burn differently. Red retardant, Phos-Chek, is a terrible idea. We are salting the earth, poisoning our rivers, killing our fish, and the best part, it was created by America's favorite manufacturer, Monsanto. So, do you really want that being dropped on your house or in our national parks or anywhere for that matter? Like all the money that we're spending on planes in Monsanto, which is now owned by a company called Perimeter Solutions, could be allocated towards ground crews clearing out dead, dying, and invasive plants that are fueling more disastrous wildfires in our wildlands. That being said, I would like to challenge our department heads at the state and federal level to consider using their incredibly energetic and talented workforce to, over the next 50 years, phase out wildland firefighting as we know it today and work towards landscape stewardship. Restore indigenous burning practices, thin our overgrown forests so that we can start creating healthy, resilient landscapes, so that we can allow fire to safely return and still have valuable trees for woods products industries and have healthy landscapes for recreation, wildlife, and clean drinking water. A healthy ecosystem experiences fire and allows nutrients to cycle through the food web, and it helps maintain the hydrologic cycles and increases groundwater retention, which is drying up across the country right now. Fire isn't just about scary, toasty landscapes or majestic redwoods with giant burn scars. It's about Simba, the circle of life. And this also means working towards ecologically based forestry and logging practices. And yes, this is different from forest management and land management plans because what's good for nature is good for us. And I've seen too many abandoned and neglected forests from Wisconsin to California to ever believe for a second that logging is good for fire and could ever be a viable replacement in its current form. Also, for anyone who says, just let it burn and figure itself out, we can't do that. These ecosystems are so overgrown that they would not recover properly, if at all, without human intervention from restoration ecologists and tree planters and other specialists. It's kind of like when your kid gets bubble gum in their hair. You know, you don't just like shave out that one spot and leave them looking like a goblin, right? Or, you know, unless it's a boy, maybe you don't just like shave it all off out of frustration. You go get the peanut butter or the mayo and you take the time to work it out. And it should be the same with our forests. We don't need to write sections off because of overwhelm. We can develop a systematic approach with these fuel load detection systems to start restoring high value, high risk areas like watersheds and sensitive ecosystems and areas adjacent to communities, and then work our way towards lower severity areas. There is a way to do this, and I know from experience that when you get the right people together, amazing things can happen. And if you're still watching, that's a sign that there is hope for our collective wildfire journey. Because here's where it really starts to hit close to home. Literally. As you know, wildfire isn't just nature, it's our home, our neighborhood, and our choices that are putting us at risk in our communities. And this leads me to reason number 3. Defensible space is not the end all be all. Historically, it has nothing to do with actual fire safety for your home and more to do with the amount of space that firefighters want between them and approaching flames when they've got their backs up against a wall. It's a term for firefighters by firefighters and was not originally a safety strategy for homeowners, though it is now being adapted to mean vegetation and fuels management within 100 feet of a home or outbuilding. But it is so important that we understand that defensible space means nothing in terms of homeowner safety or preparedness unless you've done reason number 4 and hardened your home. But before I wrap up, I need to point out that some of our worst urban conflagrations are in developments where people didn't have any defensible space to protect them. Or the other side of the same coin, they did all the fuel mitigation but didn't harden their home, and they came back to a burned down house with all their trees still standing. It has been one of the most dangerous misnomers and red herrings in this era of wildfire disasters. So now on to reason number 4. Harden your home. Your house is fuel. Early fire modelers in the 80s and 90s told us that wildland fire doesn't enter town. It stops at the edge of town. It was respectful of municipal boundaries and would stay out in the wild where it belongs. Well, I don't think that fire has developed a hunger for human domiciles so much as we've just built more houses in more places, and over time the average house size has tripled from 700 square feet to 2200 square feet, but our lot sizes have shrunk faster than your favorite socks in the dryer. So our biggest, nastiest problem is that no one has talked about homes as fuel or communities as fuel loads. In order to really appreciate how and why homes burn, we need to accept that fire doesn't see any difference between home and tree or community and forest. It doesn't recognize that one is for burning and one is not. So as long as our homes and communities are vulnerable to flying embers, and we have combustible materials in the immediate 5 feet zone around our home, we will continue to suffer these billion-dollar disasters. And to top it all off, we send toxic smoke into the stratosphere and into the lungs of our children. Because when homes and communities burn, we're also burning 100 years of plastics and bleach and Drano and vehicle oils and lubricants and all of these synthetic textiles from our furniture and carpets into the air and the soil and the water. And the biggest irony is all of our home goods are treated with some sort of fire retardant. And they work for a couple seconds until they don't, and they actually end up creating hotter, flashier, more dangerous fires than if we left our textiles au naturel. So today, we are changing the conversation. We're going to start talking about homes and communities as fuel and fuel loads so we can effectively prepare them for whichever kind of fire disaster may occur. And now, this lets us get to the actual root of the problems because we've learned that fire is just a symptom. So no more spinning our fire truck wheels as people watch their futures go up in smoke and sift through the ashes of their memories when they're given the order to return home. Today, we take effective action, and it starts with your home, and then helping your neighbors, and then your community. Focus on what you can control and work outwards. And remember, in this instance, what's good for your neighbors is also good for you. If we want to truly solve the issues that we're experiencing around wildfire today, we need to change the way we talk about it and understand that wildfire is not about suppression and fire response. It's about learning to live with a natural process and creating homes and communities that can withstand embers and flame. And final reason, Mambo number 5. Let's be real. The biggest reason we haven't been successful yet is everyone has been busy reacting to and putting out literal fires. We aren't marketing wizards, and we don't spend a lot of time crafting social media platforms hoping something will go viral. And we don't spend enough time doing everyone's favorite door-to-door safety evangelizing. We're usually people who would rather be out in the woods slinging chainsaws or rescuing kittens from trees. But times have changed, and we need to change with them. And if you have made it this far in the video with me, you're a beast. So let's recap. We have wildland fire and urban conflagration, and each of these has its own firefighters with their own objectives and priorities. 2, the wildfire industrial complex is not serving us. It makes things worse. Fire retardant is just salt with a splash of heavy metals. We're salting the earth. It doesn't extinguish fire. It just changes the way fuels burn. And what are fuels again? If you said your home, good job. It just changes the way your house burns down. It doesn't protect it. Wildland fire is a natural process that is critical to our ecosystem's continued function so they can provide the services we need, like fresh drinking water and recreation and wood products. We need to work to restore the balance so our forests aren't overgrown, tangled fire traps that are riddled with different beetles and fungi and completely impassable by humans and wildlife. And also let desperately needed rainwater roll right off the landscape instead of and percolating into our quickly emptying aquifers. 3 and 4. Homes and communities are fuel for fire just as much as trees, forests, prairies, and shrublands, and they need to be hardened against flying embers and open flame because home hardening is 95% of your home survival compared to defensible space. 5. We aren't marketing and copywriting experts who know how to make edutainment videos go viral. We're putting out literal and figurative fires every day and trying to remember if we've locked the toolbox in the truck at the end of the day. In my professional opinion, to maximize efficiency and efficacy, state and federal agencies should focus on year-round wildland restoration and not rely solely on private businesses to bid for these government contracts for thinning and fuels projects. We need to stop making billionaires out of government contractors who make our fires more dangerous, who poison our water, air, and soils. Literally, it's destroying our backyards where our kids play. We need to work with communities on creating fire resilient landscapes on adjacent government lands. I know that a lot of people have been talking about this, and it's just really hard to get the heavy bureaucratic machine moving. What is it? Newton's third law or something, that American politicians at rest tend to stay at rest? I don't know. I'm not a physicist. But we need to prioritize wildland and urban fire mitigation as the national emergency it is to prevent the economic losses associated with infrastructure loss, business and economic interruptions, long-term and short-term invisible health impacts, toxic waste removal, and hopefully also its treatment, PTSD and environmental remediation. We cannot keep writing blank checks for mop-up when we can pay a fraction for prevention. It's just like they say in medicine, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. But in our case, every dollar we spend is worth like $35 or more. And that's only for immediate known costs like rebuilding homes. It doesn't factor in the return on investment, our ROI, from preventing hidden costs like smoke inhalation and the resulting cardiopulmonary issues or exposure to toxins and resulting cancers, landscape restoration, or drinking water remediation. Look, I know there's a lot going on with our administration right now, but let me tell you, if you want to save money, invest in wildland urban fire mitigation. And for our metro fire departments, I would encourage you to focus on educating your communities on home hardening techniques. It's not just defensible space. Fire don't stop at the petunias, man. And secret reason number 6, we have forgotten as a society that we are not separate from nature. Even when we live downtown, surrounded by sidewalks and soccer fields, living in town doesn't protect you from anything, not even bears. Like, there was an article a couple of years ago about a bear in a high school, fire and water and wind. These are the only things that don't gerrymander our zip codes, okay? We are still a part of something bigger, but in trying to control everything, to irrigate it, to make the desert bloom, to fence it and pave it, we've built our own funeral pyres. But there is hope because here at Adaptive Firescapes, we blend ecology with economics, sustainability, modern living, and industry. There are answers, and we can help you find them. So if you're ready to take control of your safety, your family's safety, and your community's future, hit the like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone you think would appreciate this message. And I would love it if you would drop me a comment down below and tell me your thoughts, ask me your questions, tell me your concerns and your hopes. And together we will turn this era of conflagration into an era of regeneration. So I will see you in the next episode.